Today is Thursday, August 5th, and we are doing business as via Zoom for the Operations Committee meeting. Take attendance. I see Mr. Yusuf here, and Mr. Irish.
Yeah.
And we have staff joining us this evening, Doug Sherwood and Superintendent Botana. So we're going to have a brief meeting this evening. I don't have an agenda in front of me, but we basically have one item, and I believe that's an update, Superintendent, on the CIP.
Yep. We also have approval of minutes, but I did not finish the minutes, so we are. Okay,
we can roll it.
Yeah, we'll roll that. And then what we wanted to do, one of our priorities for the year was to accelerate our backlog of CIP projects. And so I don't know, Doug, is Steve joining us? I know he's on vacation, but I don't know if he was going to join us for this or if you're running this.
No, he sends his regards, sir.
Okay.
He didn't even get off to the Cape until Tuesday.
Okay.
So he's trying to just settle in a little bit.
Okay. So what we wanted to do was to walk through the status of those projects. At our last meeting, we had given you sort of a design, if you will, for how we were going to package these projects in different sort of waves. And so what Mr. Sherwood is going to do is walk us through where we are with those different sort of clusters of projects, starting with the ADA and then the fire safety and the HVAC and building envelope projects. So Doug, is that a good lead-in for you?
That's perfect. I hope everyone has access to the spreadsheet that was forwarded.
Can you set it up? Can you put that up on the screen? I don't think Doug has the capabilities, but is that something? Okay.
I can.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Do you want me to do that, Doug?
Yes, if you would, please, sir.
Thank you.
While we're waiting, I wanted to thank everyone present, particularly the board members who stayed the course with us to successfully come to the award of the construction projects for Longfellow, Reiki, and Presumpscot. All the contracts have been signed, and we're very optimistic that we'll have some site work underway at Presumpscot next week. Still working with the city on getting some permits and processes worked out, but the 3 modular buildings, as I understand it today, are physically on site and placed at Longfellow. So one step in the course of the bigger direction. So thank you all for staying the course, like I said, and helping us through July, which is normally a quiet time.
Thank you, Doug. Back to you. Thank you very much.
At the March 4th Operations Committee meeting, when we first brought this forward, as Superintendent said, we were very optimistic that the State Revolving Renovation Fund / ADA projects listed as priority 1 here would be completed this summer, but unfortunately it did not happen. There were some delays in the design work, not significant. We started sending over project information, both the design packages and what would become the formal part of the contract awaiting the city's front end as early as May 17th. But they're still bogged down in purchasing. For many people don't know, the director retired. We had to get our 3 projects through the system, fairly significant, and other challenges that the city has working to purchasing forward. So we'll probably be working on revising the packages into some formats that we can possibly contract ourselves, but we hadn't broached that subject with the city yet. However, even though we are somewhat behind the 8 ball, some of the projects that we wanted to get underway, we will be doing ourselves in-house. We have some renovations to restrooms at Deering High School that are required for a matriculating student this fall. And we also have some work that we want to do having to do with doors, handles and such that we might be able to do during the school year. But for the most part, we had to go forward to the Department of Education and say, could we please get some respite from the end of July deadline for the SSRF funds, and they have been positive and tentatively agreeing to that extension, awaiting our final plan that shows this project going out to bid and starting at this time. And but we know, at least in one case, the Talbot project, which is new counters and sinks in the classrooms, it's really too intrusive to do during the school year and probably will end up being worked on next summer. So we will probably need that full extension period to the end of August 2022. And I skipped over a little bit the main body of the projects. The lower list there are the ones that were in the revolving renovation fund, but we also have another ADA project at the top, and that's Lincoln Middle School. The primary concern was trying to come up with a viable at grade or other ADA accessible entrance. We've looked at every possible option we could and have two preferred options that we'd like to share with the principals, Llewellyn, in the very near future, if not next week, the week after. So very challenging, kind of unique look. But since there's still two options, I don't feel comfortable sharing them at this time, but at some future time, we can do that. So unless there's any other questions in the ADA group, I will move on to priority 2.
Just, Doug, you said that the DOE has looked favorably on our request for an extension. When do we expect to get the extension approved?
They've asked us for that detailed plan of how we're packaging the projects and when we would like to start work. I'm working with the architect, Austin Smith, on that. We hope to have that plan together, if not tomorrow, first thing Monday. And then Ann would consider that almost immediately once it's there. So I'm hoping by the end of next week that we'll have that extension approved.
And the extension would carry us to?
The end of August 2022.
Mr. Irish or Mr. Youssef, do either one of you have any questions with regards to the ADA?
I have a quick question. Are you expecting the cost is going to be the same, or you might need extra?
You'll see as a note on the second project, we had a ADA project approved in a prior year that we hadn't executed yet. Part of that was we wanted to have some not leeway or wiggle room, but some reserve just in case some of these projects came in over. So rather than starting that group of projects up, we're trying to say if the Talbot project takes $20,000 more to get it right, then we want to do it right. We don't want to cut back. So that's kind of that second line there right now is being held as a reserve to cover any losses. But we've tried to do everything within budget. But we've also seen issues where, if I take the sink out, I should do the counter. If I take the counter out, should I do the shelving? If I take this, do I just do the bottom cabinets or do I do top and bottom cabinets? So we'll get pricing to see what that all looks like. But the intention is to use that other second line there as a reserve.
And of these, again, which ones were we going to do internally? Just
They're just very selected items. Like I said, we'll take 2 restrooms out of the Deering package to get done. And then there's some lever handles and door sets at the selected various schools that we'll pick up on as the progress goes on, because we think that something we could do probably in-house, cheaper and quicker. But then, like I said, Austin and I will be working on packaging the projects in a little bit different format so they might be more attractive to bidders and then get a timeline to the state.
Thank you. Mr. Irish, do you have any questions at this time?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
Priority 2 is the fire safety group. We got alarm systems that we need to replace at Warren King. We want them to be addressable, which means that we know where the issue is from looking at the panel, and certainly to enunciate properly. We want to put at PI stands for the Peaks Island Elementary School, the last 2 on the list. We're hoping to integrate those 2 with also a project down lower in the list in the other category, which is the interior renovation of the school. We'll be meeting with Kelly and select staff and hiring an architect in the fall and trying to get that all together. And then obviously the bigger project, the fire sprinkler system installation at Deering High School. There's some protection in 1982 edition, but virtually nothing in the original building, and a lot of the original building is wood frame with some void spaces. So it's really critical that that work get underway. We were very fortunate to connect with Colby Engineering, who's done some of the work with Scott Simons on the ADA, and find out that they have actually recently formed what they call a fire protection group. It's a specific element of engineering expertise who just does this kind of work. They want to make visits to the site and before they make a formal proposal, but they're very anxious to get underway. Really are looking forward to getting this particular package of work.
And when do you expect this, the contract with Colby Engineering to be signed?
We hope to have a proposal by next Friday, and then subsequently, within that same week after, to have a contract ready for processing.
And then from the time that we contract to when we actually have the specifications to bring out to bid, or do they do the work as well?
Yeah, they're hoping to be in a place where that we would be bidding out in the December, January timeframe, so that we would be, primed in the normal advertising time block for summer 2022 work. 2023, work.
Thank you, Doug. Mr. Irish or Mr. Youssef, any questions on the fire alarms and sprinkler systems? No? Okay.
That's my other, just, anticipating some of the questions that, so if it goes out to bid in January, would this work be done next summer?
That would be the hope. And the question is going to be the availability of product, which we're finding is a challenge in many of the areas today, in different industries and sectors of the construction supply business. But we will be working with them to integrate that we have the appropriate proprietary anodes, and if we need to order anything in advance, that's what we would need to do. So if we're bidding in December, but somebody tells us it's a 6 or 8 month lead time, and we're not sure it will be here in June or July, then we would place the order ourselves directly for the product and have the contractor install.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug. You can go ahead, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Sorry. Priority 3 on the page there is our HVAC system, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. As proposed at our March 4th meeting, we approached the city HVAC team, and they seem to be all primed and prepared to be our champions on the work at Talbot, Lincoln, and Portland, as they are right now finishing up the 2 projects at Deering, the first one listed and the last one listed. By the end of this month, they'll now have time to get in deep on those 3 projects, and likely, just like they did for this project, be on the same timeline that I just mentioned for the fire systems, hiring an architect very soon here, working with the bidding process to hopefully be out in December, January, and do the work next summer.
When you say that
there's smaller projects, all rooftops, fairly clean approach as opposed to the challenges they had during the summer.
And when you say that they will champion, does that mean that they will do it?
Yeah, they'll be overseeing the design, the installation, and the commissioning process.
And so for the Talbot, when it says that they will solicit design services, for the Lincoln, when it says that they will champion.
They should have been written the same. I should have taken that middle line out.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Doug. Go ahead.
Any other questions on the HVAC group?
I guess I have one, Doug, in regards to air circulation, et cetera, for the HVAC, going back to school, COVID, et cetera. I know we have other things in place. This doesn't affect anything that we have in place.
No, it doesn't have impact anything else we have in place. In fact, we're going to be having the contractor who installed the ionizers, as an example, go back into the systems and check to make sure everything is functioning and running properly, as the sentence goes. And we still have the ionizers and other air purifiers in other parts of the district that are still functioning properly. We'll be talking about another project in this next group that's also party to some work that took place last fall regarding windows.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Ms.
Thompson, just on that issue, we are, because a board member Bondo asked for this at the board meeting on Tuesday. We are updating our sort of building by building, school by school analysis of the ventilation. So you will have that ahead of the board meeting on the 17th.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Irish or Mr. Youssef, do you have any questions in regards to the HVAC? All set? Okay. On we go, Doug. Thank you.
Very good. Priority 4, building envelope. A number of years ago, I think it was 2017, Allied Engineering did a formal assessment of the roof at Portland High School as part of one of our unsuccessful state revolving renovation fund projects. And they're willing to, take another quick look at that particular condition of the roof, begin to provide budget estimates for a multi-year phase project, and to design the first phase and as part of this initial offering. Again, this is similar to what I just said on the fire systems project. I'd hoped to have the proposal by now, but certainly within the week, and then subsequent to that, hopefully with successful numbers, have a contract in place the subsequent week. Unfortunately, in this particular case, we don't have any funding in an existing approved capital program for a phase of the Portland roof, so that would be a consideration for the next round of requests.
But we can't really do that until we have the
budget estimates and a phasing plan. Correct.
So really, for us to be able to do that through CIP, we need to have this step completed.
Correct. So we'd hope to have the estimates to feed the next CIP process.
Mr. Superintendent, do you know when that is? Can you just say typically when that is when we submit the next one?
It should be towards the end of the fall, usually starts sometime around October, with, the board taking action, generally between December and January, and then the city, last year it was approved in March. They aspire to do it earlier every year, but it seems to always get, sort of pushed back and winds up being in March. Is that about right, Doug?
Yes.
Great. I wasn't sure if Mr. Youssef or Mr. Irish were familiar with that. Thank you for recapping that. Go ahead, Doug. Thank you.
I was going to say thanks for the recap.
Good. In the case of the window projects that you see there on the list, Casco Bay Paths, Deering, Portland High, and more, we have reached out to Paul Becker, who was the individual professional that was on our list at the March 4th meeting. Helpful and somewhat more enthusiastically for me, his firm has subsequently been acquired by Thornton Tomasetti, a solutions-based company with a sustainability focus. They did some of our LED issues way back on the East End project and others. They're now a conglomerate, if I call it that, of 200 plus lead professionals working out of 49 offices with a global reach. They have experts in building envelope technology in their Boston office that are going to be taking a closer look and submitting a proposal to get this particular work underway, in the same context of a bid in midwinter, and work hopefully to start next summer, if not sooner, if we can get into some of the classrooms to start work. We do have, in the case of Portland High and Deering, prototypes that we can already be working from. The city also did some work over at Casco Bay with the appropriate thermal pane windows. More will be somewhat of a new initiative, but I don't anticipate any concerns for the first 3 having a potential to get off and have some work done next summer.
Mr. Sherwood, could you recap for us? So Daring High School, Portland High School, all of them where they're having replacement of windows. They scattered, in the case of Portland High and Daring, as we contracted late summer, fall last year, we made it sure that we had at least one operable window in each classroom. These particular projects that we're talking about now would be to start the phased projects that are listed in our 10-year capital plan, and the first set funded. So we're hoping to get room by room attacking this by this time next summer, or I should say finishing up some by this time next summer.
And then Doug, how far does this get us at the three schools in terms of the number of windows that it replaces?
I'm comfortable in saying that we're looking at least a third, and I think maybe in the case of more, depending on the window system, half as we look forward. And I think that's pretty much what we've shown in our plan for Daring and Portland. It's a 3-year phased project.
And then the design proposal that is the first deliverable here, what we're awaiting right now, that will be for just this phase, or will it be for the 3 phases?
It will be something we want them to set up for the 3 phases if we can afford it, so that we have the hard number going forward. But I'm not sure if that full amount will cover what we need to do. So we may just be, anticipating some design acquisition subsequently just for the install portion. We'll have already identified what the window type is in the process.
I'm just wondering if, so thinking about this next year's CIP, if it would make sense for us, since these projects will actually not be done until next summer, it appears, right?
Right.
What if we were to prioritize that in next year's CIP? Would we be able to do all of it in one season?
It's possible, but not very probable, due to the workplace environment, the number of technicians and professionals that are available to do this sort of work right now. We're finding shortages in almost every career trade, whether it's a window installer or a mechanical professional. But there's always an opportunity, and if we're ready, we can certainly go for it in that direction and have the capability, perhaps as an alternate, in the original bid from December to say, would you engage in this project to successful completion, if not this summer and 2 summers subsequent, so you can possibly award it together and keep working.
And this work can only be done in the summer?
There's some potential to have other work done, but the challenge is, getting the heavy windows into the building and out of the way of, students and staff, and then kind of cycling through the building. We kind of did that with the repairs at Portland High. Wasn't such a challenge when we got to Daring with the numbers, and where we were working. So it is a function sometimes of opportunity in building, and we can certainly work with whomever the selected contractor is to see, how they see the phasing work. But we did get some phasing work done at Portland High when we did the repairs.
Mr. Youssef or Mr. Irish, do you have any questions in regards to Project 4?
Just want to clarify, is having their office in Boston a factor that might prolong the period that they are willing to sign the contract?
No, we'll still have local presence with Mr. Becker, a noted professional engineer, and they'll be doing the execution of the project, the actual oversight and management here locally. So it's just getting their design and insight expertise, having worked on many different building envelope projects in New England, where we have a number of, architecturally unique structures and building envelopes. So it's just to get, some advice from that perspective. We do know, like I said, that we have a prototype for Daring and Portland. I'm not sure if we'd want to change that, but they would actually provide some insights to that. Do we want to have a triple pane, or do we want to stay with a double pane? And, and that size of window, do we really get any gain from having the different thermal effects? So we'll be working with that group more from a consulting and review standpoint than an execution of the project standpoint. So I don't foresee that distance being a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Sherwood. Mr. Irish, do you have any questions at this time?
No, thanks.
And then, Doug, just the 2 masonry projects.
Yeah, we haven't done the due diligence yet on the Talbot Masonry project. But we did have the emergency authority, and Knowles is at work at Deering. They're not physically on site today, as I recall, because they're working on taking those, cast features, the molds that they're making to replace those unique reliefs that are on the front of the building over the main entrance. And then they'll be back to do the restoration work. I'm hoping to get an update as to where they are come the start of school by the end of day tomorrow. So, but I do know that they've been hard at work, and right now the focus is on casting molds of the features they took back and trying to recreate the vibrancy that the original features had.
Mr. Sherwood, I have a quick question on the Portland High School with the Padula grant, the $200,000. Would that have been without that generous gift from the Padula family? Would that have been the $275? Is that how I'm reading that?
Yeah, that's how you're reading that, just as adding to the opportunity to fund what we need to fund for the windows. So that was the first phase, was light on the capital program with the investment from Padula. And then you look at the subsequent years, and I think it looks like 333,000-ish. So about $1 million project when it's all said and done.
Great. Just for FYI, Mr. Youssef and Mr. Irish, Mr. Padula passed away, and he was very connected to Portland High School, and he actually did the geodesic dome at Lincoln Middle School as well. But his I don't want to say his thing, but was all about energy efficiency, and he was very close to Portland High as well as the Portland Public Schools. So just very generous in his passing that the family gave us this money. So just wanted to give you a little context. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Thompson. And back on the roof replacement, what do we estimate the total cost of the roof replacement is, Doug, once we get the engineering report? I mean, what is a roof replacement on a building like?
We're estimating that this project could be over $2 million before it's done. Some of that will be a function of some structural repairs that need to happen, and then some may be in that phasing itself. And that's why I'm want to have that good first look in the late fall before anything would go out to bid or would be ready for the estimates that we're talking about putting in the CIP to see, could we put phases 1 and 2 together and get some economy of scale out of that particular approach. So it may be that if we asked for $300,000 and got $300,000, that there might not be as much equity or efficiency in that number, the product as well as time, and it could have some value. So when we start looking at phasing, we're going to be looking at the practical aspects of what could be combined in a period of time and maybe find some efficiencies.
So, Mr. Sherwood, I have a question for you. Where Portland High School is deemed a historic building, are there special materials that we have to use on that roof? Is there anything special about that? There's nothing, no slate or anything of that nature up there. Is it just regular roofing?
No, there is no historic nature to the flashings and or any exposed sections of the roof. There were issues related to the windows and window profiles. So when we did the prototypes there, we did go through the full process of historic preservation, and Deb and her crew there to take a good look to make sure that we were reproducing and producing in kind, for the appearances of the face of the building.
Okay, thank you very much. And there's no slate on the building anymore, right?
No.
Okay, all right.
In fact, there used to be slate on the Deering roof, and for a while it was actually in the attic still. It's talking about adding weight to the building.
Ooh. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any questions. Is there a next section, Doug, or is this the end of the line?
Yeah, we have one more section called Other.
Thank you.
We haven't done the due diligence here that I would really like to say and have any firm direction on, but there are two items that I just wanted to highlight quickly, and I mentioned one of them already, and that is that, you see here in this list, somewhat further down, the aspect of the renovations at the Peaks Island Elementary School, C20S06. We want to integrate that project with the fire projects and data that you saw earlier in the fire safety category and group. And we have started work on the data door access control projects. And we found out as we started to dig into that there's almost a 6-month delay in getting product right now, whether it's a specific type of camera or the interfacing equipment that actually operates the doors. So we placed a large order in knowing that we would need to use different aspects. Our first two priorities are King and Lincoln, and then we'll work down the list from there. But I'm not sure if we've even actually said, what would be the next project after those two. But we do have two, funded projects that we will, be working very quickly here with Minuteman Security, who does all our cameras and security work, to move these projects forward.
So those are fully scoped out. It's just a matter of getting the supplies.
Correct.
Materials. Yeah.
And it's all proprietary and already been approved by the city that, they are our vendor, and these are the systems that we're using so that, we can stay in kind with the work that needs to be done, and everything matches, or we can switch out, flip out, different process. We also have an agreement with them to, upgrade the software and the training on an annual basis, for the different aspects. So if we get somebody new in the building, that we need to process in, they'll come and train that person.
I have a question, but I want to turn to Mr. Youssef and Mr. Irish first to see if there's any questions in regards to the other section. Okay, hearing none. I had a question in regards to the site drainage, Mr. Sherwood, on Daring Heights.
Right.
You talk about, excuse me, the Longfellow BOF and how we did that with Lyseth Moore, and we had to actually take some funds and allocate from I don't know if it's the building level. I get confused now, building level, or if the DABC.
Yeah, we had taken funds under the reserve to do the work out front. This work is less extensive.
Okay.
What we were told by the city in the Lyseth Moore area is that we're actually not just collecting our runoff, we're actually collecting some city runoff. So it processes through to the appropriate containers. And so we had that little small island, if you will, as you enter the Lyseth Moore campus, that's really ours, but they have another detention pond that sits just south or just closer to Auburn Street off of the Moore building. That's theirs, and we cross connect to that, and then it works forward from there. So there is a little bit more of a collaboration there. In this case, we've had known runoff. We've had some of the drains back up as you go down to the fields in Deering. So there are some pieces of the drainage system for the new Longfellow project that is fixing some of the pre-existing issues at Longfellow. So this would just be to tie in some slope and drainage into the surface kind of element of the site. Right now, if you went there, you'll see there's a huge trench along that face of Longfellow that faces Deering, and that will be kind of part and parcel to what we're crossing to cross connect to piping and drainage that's being installed as part of the new work.
Great, thank you. I was going to try to be funny, but I was going to say, oh wait, do we get a rebate on the stormwater? Paid. But anyway, okay. Any questions, Mr. Irish or Mr. Youssef?
Just a question about learning process. The PIES, interior renovation, we said work with the school staff to identify the specific needs. Why we don't see the other schools in that statement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's mainly because this is the only one where we are looking at interior renovations and a fixed amount of money and, multiple possible things to spend it on. So the idea is to prioritize how we're spending that $250,000 on the kinds of projects that are going to make the most difference for the schools. So in some ways, it's not all that different from the design process that we had with the BFOF schools, except that it's at a much smaller scale. And in that process, a big part of the, design was working with school staffs to prioritize what are the things that they feel are going to make the most difference for their being able to deliver instruction. So.
Thank you, Super. That was helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef. Okay, any further questions? Okay, seeing none. You still have the floor, Mr. Sherwood.
Well, I appreciate everyone's attention and the questions and the perspectives and clarifications from the superintendent. That concludes my overview of the action plan for our current items of projects totaling nearly $9.4 million.
Thank you, Mr. Sherwood, for always keeping us on task. And Superintendent, do you have anything you'd like to add at this time?
A couple of things. So first of all, I want to thank Doug for just that, for, keeping track of all of this. Obviously, you can see there is, a tremendous amount of work that is already budgeted that is not already done. And so I think primarily for Mr. Youssef and Mr. Irish, because you weren't here when we made these decisions last year, we limited our CIP, which is our capital improvement projects request from the city. We limited it to about $800,000, where in previous years it had been, $2.5 million to $4 million in requests. And the reason that we had a limited request was because we have these large number of projects that we've not been able to move forward for a variety of the reasons that you heard today, and sort of the underlying one of, just a lot of work to do and, not a huge number of people focused on doing this work. So, Mr. Sherwood is managing all of this while at the same time helping to manage the $64 million BFOF renovations and the day-to-day operations of the school district in a pandemic. And so, I think it's important to sort of contextualize that, the reason that we had a limited CIP is our recognition that we have limited capacity to be able to do that. And we want to finish what we started and what what is funded currently before we go and ask for additional money that is going to be, sort of sitting there, not being able to act it on. So that's where, if you saw some of the questions that I asked about the window projects and the roof at Portland High School, I'm trying to think of what are the things that we can tie into the projects that we're already in the process of moving forward to prioritize those in our CIP request for this coming year, so that we're not having to do another design project. And, all of these steps that you see here involve finding somebody to design, entering into a contract with that party, having them do the design, and then putting the design out to bid with contractors, and then actually, having the contractors come and do the projects and all of that stuff. So there are all of these steps involved. So if there's a way that we can capitalize on the fact that that we're now doing these phasing designs for windows at the high schools, for the roof at Portland High School, it would probably make sense for us to prioritize those items as we go into CIP as a way to, be able to just couple them with existing projects that are already going to be bid. So if we could do a single bid for those windows at Paths, Deering, and Portland, so that we could then, be done with that and not have to do another separate design process for them. And, I'm not sure about the roof, but that one also just always weighs on my mind because, I'm now in my 6th year, and that was something that we were planning to do my first year here. And, I'm concerned that, the roof isn't getting younger, unlike the rest of us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Do you have anything further, Mr. Superintendent?
Nope.
Okay. Before we close out, Mr. Youssef or Mr. Irish, do you have anything you'd like to add, or?
I just want to thank Javier for that perspective. It helps a lot. And Doug, thank you for the work that you do.
Well, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Sure.
Great. Well, thank you very much, as always, Mr. Sherwood. We appreciate your help, and thank you to our superintendent for keeping us on task as well. I think we're good to go. So we will adjourn at 5:45. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.